A trafficker makes between $100,000 to $400,000 off of one victim per year.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
Okay. That's a lot. And they traffic minimum 3 people, average 5, 7, up to some of them dumps up to 13. Do you know how much money that is? But when that person is out and they gone through restoration services, it takes $786,000 a year for the upkeep of that person, that victim, that taxpayers are paying.
Wow.
Taxpayers are paying.
Wow.
So if you don't care about anything at all, you could at least care about, because most people care about their money, because that's usually how you motivate them.
Hey friends, welcome back to the show. As you know, we always talk about a variety of nonprofit topics, centrally grant writing, but a lot of areas that support nonprofits. And now and then, I like to do a nonprofit spotlight episode. This week is a topic that I have been wanting to do for a long time, but just hadn't found quite the right guest or approach yet. And so this is a little more sensitive topic, so that if you have little ones around, you may want to pop your earbuds in case you're driving in the car or something. Just want you to be aware in advance. This is a very family-friendly show, and I'm committed to keeping it that way. But today's topic is maybe a bit much if you have young kids around that you might not want their little ears exposed to it. I am going to be talking with Christi Nabors about DeliverFund. DeliverFund is a powerful nonprofit, as she will explain, and they are disrupting the global human trafficking markets. They're combining uniquely qualified personnel with the best of the best technologies, and then leveraging those in new ways and innovative methods to reach and rescue victims of human trafficking. So this is a heavy topic and something that I know is on a lot of people's minds, and something that I've just felt burdened about giving this a platform to share the work they're doing and to be able to help spread the word, help create awareness, help people understand what's happening and what we can do about it as well. So Christi is going to explain more about their work and more specifics, but I wanted to introduce her first. Christi Nabors is the Director of Development for DeliverFund. She has been in both the for-profit and nonprofit spaces, and she'll tell us more about her experience there. But this has given her such a wealth of experience and information and powerful skill set to be able to bring to both worlds and both sides of the table. And it's really interesting. She has so much great insight and shares some pretty powerful work that they are doing. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this and invite you to be a part of the story and listen in and see what you think. All right, here we go. Christi, welcome to the show. I am so excited to visit with you, especially after we've gotten acquainted here. So before we start, tell us a random fact about yourself.
Random fact. This one always fascinates people, and I'm not really sure why. But whenever I was younger, I was raised, I was in Dallas, but in the country. And I always had every animal you can think of. So I have bottle fed like goats and pigs and squirrels and raccoons, but I have house trained a goat.
Nice. That's impressive.
Yep. My daddy used to call me Ellie Mae. So I did try to house train a turkey, and that does not work.
Oh, that would be tough.
You can't, they have no idea what's going on.
Okay. So if we're going to house train, go with the goat.
You go with a goat. Go with a goat. Okay. Yeah.
And did it climb on everything? Because
everything.
That's what I always think of with goats. They climb.
Yeah, she climbed on everything. I was in college. I was a freshman in college at SMU. And I would take her back and forth with me to class in a dog carrier because she had to be fed her bottle every 2 hours. And so when I took... I know. And then I would, be home at my parents' house, and then she would stand on my dad's. He had a table beside by his lazy boy chair, and he would watch TV in the afternoon. But that's also where the mail lived. Like when people came in, you put the mail on the big tray there by dad's TV. Mm-hmm. And the goat would always jump on the tray there, and she would start to chew the paper, and she would start with like the corner, and she'd give her the corner, and then she would chew everything. So yes. No. And she would get in the closet and chew the hem of your skirt and the dresses and chew your shoes.
Oh no.
But when I was really tired, of course, I was a college student. Sometimes I was out too late, and you need a babysitter because the goat just never stops. So what you do is you get the biggest piece of paper you have, like the big tabloid pieces, and I put her in a playpen, like a kitty playpen, and then I would give her the corner of the paper, and I would let her, and once they put it in their mouth, it never leaves. So she would just chew this giant tabloid piece of paper around, and I could get like a 20-minute nap in.
Wow. Okay. So you learned parenting skills with a goat in college.
A lot of parenting skills. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Not the right way to do it, but yes.
That's very random and fun. I'd love to see college kids running around with goats on campus.
Oh, yeah. God, campus would never be the same. But college kids probably might be better these days.
Yeah. Might be good life skills training. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, you sound like have come quite a long way since your college days of babysitting a goat. So tell us a little bit about your journey and your mix of experience, which sounds very vast, and what led you to this point.
Yes. So, my goodness, I started out in the for-profit world. I never thought I would be in a nonprofit space at all. And I was I grew my whole career has been leveraging technology and growing companies and creating revenue streams. But I was recruited out of recruited out of the for-profit world to come and help do a startup nonprofit based in Dallas, and to build a train the trainer program. So we built a training program, digital online products, and I will tell you, the first year in doing a startup nonprofit, and number one, not knowing a thing about nonprofit, sitting in the staff meetings, it's like learning a new language. Mm-hmm. Like they don't even use the same words.
Right.
And I remember sitting there looking around the table like, I don't even know what that means. And is it even nice to talk about rich people like that? Right? Because I came from such a different world. And so over time, then I developed, my joke is it takes a year to learn the vocabulary, learn the language, and learn, it's okay to learn how much people, it's capacity to give, right?
Mm-hmm. To become fluent in the language of it.
You have to know. And so it took a good long year, but, starting a nonprofit, wore every hat that you can possibly think of. Everything from, marketing to live production to digital production, fundraising, of course, COO, CEO, CFO. I did them all. So that was fun because I got to learn all the facets, and I fell in love with doing something meaningful in a big way and creating sustainability. So what I really enjoy is whenever nonprofits are creative and are able to have revenue generating materials or programs or something, so that's not always you don't always have to go back to donors forever and ever and ever, because it's like my friend Dave Carey, he calls it a self-licking ice cream cone or something. And I never really got it, but he's like, that's what nonprofits are. They never figure out a way to be sustainable, to be able to take care of themselves. So self-licking ice cream cone, that's what he calls it.
Love that analogy. I talk about sustainability a lot on the show, but I'd love to hear a fresh perspective. What does sustainability mean to you?
Well, Sorry, that's my mother calling.
Oh,
literally.
Uh-oh. Do you need to text her? Because I know how my mom, if she gets worried if I don't reply very
She'll call 3 times. She'll call you in a minute. So if your phone rings,
Okay.
Teresa, it's my mother.
I'll let her know. She can jump on the show too.
She'll find you. She'll find you. She'll find me. She'll find somebody.
I love moms.
So sustainability for me, yeah. Really, it's been in different ways. So it's revenue generating. It's finding new ways to do something old. Sometimes it's just shaking it up altogether. Maybe that doesn't work anymore. Stop what we're doing, take a good hard look, and quickly realign. Course correction. I learned that I worked with 2 amazing people, Dr. Harville Hendricks and Helen Kelly Hunt, New York Times bestselling authors, and I ran their nonprofit, Relationships First, Safe Conversations. And, Helen was always about quick course correction. So I love to quote her in the quick course correction.
Good one.
But a lot of nonprofits can't do that. And a lot of big companies can't do that. Right. But I think companies are better at it because I came from both. And some nonprofits are just tough because I've worked with some and consulted with many. They just can't get out of their own way of doing the same thing the same way, and never get to take a step back and say, well, have you thought about this? And, it's probably not because of arrogance or pride. It's probably because they haven't had a minute to take a step back. Because I also do know in nonprofit, you're literally wearing 3 hats and doing 4 jobs. Mm-hmm. Your role is 24/7, and you're doing so much more. So you don't have the time or the capacity to plan, to think differently. And you don't have the bandwidth of real creative people. So I love working. I always say I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I prefer to be the least smart person in the room. So I can have people around me who can challenge me to think differently. But also just sometimes they may have a crazy idea, but then I can concretize that and make it into something that is doable, and this is how we can do it. So I love that as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that you point that out, that sometimes we need to look at what's not working anymore, or what do we need to change, or what crazy idea do we need to maybe take seriously and say, hey, wait a minute, that just might work. And sometimes I think some of the holdup too is fear, whether it's fear of the unknown or fear of change or fear of letting go of traditions. And this is how we've always done it. I think a lot of things come into play there that maybe we need to deal with that root first to get people to open up to those ideas.
100% fear. I'm with you there. I agree that that's probably what it is. It's fear of the unknown, fear of what not to do, but sometimes it's just fear because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can say, well, I don't understand it, so I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. Or you can just say yes and figure it out.
Let's try it.
Way. Sometimes not the best way. When I was learning how to do auctioning of NFTs and crypto fundraising and blockchain and all of these different ways that people want to give there, and there's so many cryptocurrencies, and I've got to figure out how to ways to accept them. And I could have said, no, I don't want to do this fundraiser where people are donating, NFTs and then going to auction them and build this whole thing around them, because I don't even know what that is. I mean, I'm old, and old people so I could have said, I don't understand it. And part of me and all I could do is say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's try. But by the way, I'm old, so don't make fun of me. And so, and they didn't, and they held my hand along the way. This person who came up, this donor who came up with this idea, and he didn't make fun of me because I was just like, well, I'm sure he laughed a little. I mean, I'm sure they all had to, because they're like, God, this lady's old.
No, you keep saying that, but you don't seem old to me. I guess it's all relative. but I know what you mean though. And sometimes just owning it up front though goes a long way of just saying, hey, I do not know what these words mean. I don't know what we're doing here. Hold my hand and teach me. Let's do it, even though I have no clue. And sometimes that just puts it out on the table. Like, hey, we can work through this. I need your help.
Well, you know what? You just lined out a pattern of my life that I didn't really know that I was doing. It's like when I started at nonprofit, I'm like, I don't even know what these words are, right? I'm learning a whole new like vocabulary. And I just say, I don't even know what this means. And then, with the NFTs and everything else, and I'm like, hey, I don't know what this is. Tell me what it is. And that brings me to DeliverFund, who I'm working with all of these super specialized, highly trained, highly skilled former spies, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security analysts, all military people. And they use in the whatever, the Pathfinder, and then they've got all of these words that are sometimes like in the PPT and the da and you're like, I don't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. But there's those are military terms. I'm like, y'all have to talk like normal people. Yeah. I don't even know what you're saying. And of course I know the bloggers don't care they don't care what I'm saying, but whenever you're around people that you don't know what you're saying, you have to ask. And then I always try to help people because I'm always the one that doesn't understand what they're saying. And I'm like, and if you don't know what that means, what they're talking about is our, it's our human trafficking watch list. And they've got to put some fancy names on it or whatever, but it's really just the human trafficking watch list. Yeah. Say that. Then people understand. They're like, I know what that means. Instead of making them feel stupid, and then they never understand the point of the conversation.
That's
so
a great point.
I have to be an interpreter.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my role, and even with grant writers, a lot of our role is to interpret. Like sometimes it's a complex mission, or sometimes it's a matter of collecting certain data points and stories, and then weaving that into something tangible that a potential donor or grant maker can understand and resonate with.
100%. It's just like
connectors.
That. And all of the grant writers out there know this pain that people internal who are so close to it, it's crystal clear to them.
Yes.
But hey, you have to make a regular person understand what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like somebody teaching me NFTs and the crypto and fundraiser and sponsoring, they had to make me understand that. So you have to make someone else understand it. But we are interpreters for everything. So I feel like I've been the interpreter of everything in my life. I always ask people, do they have, I lived in Europe in college back and forth. And so when I would come home, I would kind of stutter through different places, or how whenever they have a store up wherever you are in Missouri, where I am in Dallas, like, do y'all have? And they're, oh no, but it's a whatever, right? You have to interpret what it is. So I feel like my whole life has been an interpretive language. I'm one of 6 kids and I'm the baby. So I had to just listen hard and fast and then ask questions later because there's a lot of people around me.
Yeah. And you just connect the dots as fast as you can and keep things moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
What has been the most surprising thing for you in working with a nonprofit like DeliverFund? Because it sounds like this is a huge shift from past types of work you've done, whether in the business or for-profit world. So what's been surprising?
I think I'm going to say a little bit about DeliverFund and what they do, and then I'll tell you what surprised me, just so people will understand. Sure. So DeliverFund is founded by former CIA, NSA, Homeland Security analysts who worked in counterterrorism. They hunted terrorists. And whenever Nic was in Afghanistan, he saw women and children being sold. So he called and said, hey, I found some people, women and children being sold. What do I do about it? They said, well, there's no budget set aside for human trafficking. You're going to have to leave them. So Nic said, well, when I'm coming, I know how to hunt people, terrorists, so I can hunt traffickers. So when he came home, they started DeliverFund. And so what they do is they hunt human traffickers and they dismantle human trafficking rings, but they teach and train law enforcement. So the key is giving law enforcement the tools, and DeliverFund develops the technology and the platforms that law enforcement can use to make their job faster and easier, a lot faster. What used to take them 26 hours, they can get done in 2 hours.
That's incredible.
Using our technology platform. So a lot of things. Now you said, what have I found fascinating? Or one thing, and being in nonprofit, and everybody here in the nonprofit world, y'all all know about human trafficking. At least you know it exists. And I thought, like everybody, at least had that basic knowledge to start from, right? You have to have an assumption of people's knowledge, so then you can build on that. And so we all assume that because we know about impoverished communities, we know about, at-risk youth, we know about foster kids, the risk with foster kids. We know all of these things because this is the world we live and we work in. We know the heartbeat of our city. We know the needs of our city. Whenever, COVID came through and, people were talking about, just their work and their commute, and they didn't have commute anymore. And isn't this great? And then the kids can just work from, do their schoolwork from home. And, part of it, like, y'all are so blind. You're talking about kids that don't have now access to food or meals. Some of these kids that don't have electricity in their home or a computer. Like, this is a big deal. So there's this blind world, but our world, we know it, we live it, we see it every day. So to put that into DeliverFund terms is, I talk to people frequently about, DeliverFund and what we do. They're like, but that doesn't happen here. Well, I'm like, these are American girls and American dollars. Like, I can show you a home on your street, a house on your street or in your neighborhood that there's been some sort of human trafficking activity. And more than human trafficking and sex trafficking, labor trafficking is prominent everywhere. So I've been so surprised that people just still don't believe it exists.
Right here around us. It's not just overseas or in some other country. It's right here in our neighborhoods.
Yeah. And that's the part, I guess I went with the assumption that everybody at least had a basic knowledge that it does exist. And I think now it's becoming more talked about, and we don't have to convince the public that it's bad. I think that when DeliverFund first started 7 years ago, they were having to convince people that it existed and it was bad because it was still so new and rarely talked about. People didn't have a clue. So I think that we can all agree that it's bad, at least at some level, so we can get past that. But now we have to go and educate people that it does exist here. Mm-hmm. It's in your kids' gaming platform chat rooms. Mm-hmm. You think it's on their text messages. It's not. It's where you're not going to see. It's where you are most vulnerable, parents, because, we can watch our kids and we have access to their texts. We can read their whatever, but they're on gaming platforms. They're talking on Instagram chats. Now, parents probably even have that, but there's so many underlying and peripheral chat ways that traffickers get to young kids. Mm-hmm. And the average age of a victim is 15 years old. So a trafficker will invest 12 months, 18 months grooming a person to leave their family. So this is not like a fly-by-night, come in and sneak in your window and grab your kid. They have built trust, long-term trust with it. They have invested a lot of time, basically money, because why? They're going to make a hell of a lot of money on selling your kid.
Wow. And I'm sure the platforms are a moving target from your perspective of trying to identify how are these infiltrating and what are kids using. And I mean, there's new apps every day.
there's new apps every day. And that's not really where we target. We hunt traffickers. We don't hunt and protect the kids, because every kid is a target. Any person in a vulnerable position. And by the way, who of us has not been vulnerable at least once in our life? Like, who has not felt pretty that day, or didn't feel like they had the right whatever that day, or just had a crappy week? We've all felt at some point vulnerable or weak. And that's, so all of us, it's me, especially when I was younger. I mean, I would be prime real estate, right? For a trafficker to come after us, because we all were, especially I think girls. And then
in the teenage years, which are crazy anyway.
Who didn't feel like fat or had a big pimple, right?
Yeah, had a rough day. Friends are tough.
Trafficker comes up and says, "You're so pretty." Oh, I don't feel pretty today. Or,
all the right things.
You're not fat. You're skinny. You look beautiful. And that's it. They say all the right things. So of course they're going to spend months and months and years grooming you. So we don't. There's plenty of other things and resources that are on the victim side, but we hunt the trafficker. So we know who they are and we know where they are. We have the only human trafficking watch list in the world. So I know. And I hope there are some traffickers watching, because we do know them. And all we're waiting is for them to get to the right city when we hand over their file, the intelligence file that we've been collecting, and hand it to the law enforcement, and they go and take them.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That's really amazing.
So that's why DeliverFund is different, because it is exciting. What they're doing is totally different than anything else out there, and anything that I've ever worked with. And I do love that part of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm seeing a couple of things in particular that are jumping out, that it looks like you identified a gap in the market, so to speak. You didn't try to duplicate what's already happening. The founders saw a huge need that was not being met. And I'm sure they dug deep into that. And they had
the unique skill set.
Yes,
you saw that.
Exactly.
And they're the only people that do have that very unique skill set to hunt.
And they can pull that in. And they can
use that same. Yeah. So it was like, it's right time and right place. And it just made sense, and gives them that, what they were trained to do. But yet, and still protect, because their core of them, and most of the people that work with us at DeliverFund are former military in some way. So a lot of special operations, even law enforcement and investigators and those folks. But their core is to help people, right? And that's what they want to do. And they love just serving and helping people. So this gives them a continue the mission sort of story. So after the military, there's still a way for them to do something that's very big and use their skills. And
that's very powerful. That's
why they're so good at it. They're just so good at it.
That's incredible. And what a way to really take the best resources and focus them towards this very specific problem. And also, I've noticed you've identified, we do not do this. We do specialize in this. So you've really clearly defined what you do and what you do not do, which allows you to focus in and make that powerful difference on your specific area of identifying the traffickers, training the law enforcement, and just going after it.
And developing technology. Yeah. So it's really, we are a technology company is what we are. We develop the technology and the platform and train the law enforcement. And what we do not, of course, you wouldn't want former military, like doing restoration services. They wouldn't have a clue of what to do. Right.
Right.
They know how to hunt terrorists. So let's put them where they're best trained. And give them the tools, and the other thing is the donor money, government. There's not enough money for us, the public, to train the people who are already working for DeliverFund, because they've been trained by the best, the U.S. military. And millions of dollars have been poured into each one of them in their training. So, hey, guess what? Nonprofit world, we don't have to, donors, we don't have to pay for their training. They came like that.
That's an incredible resource to make the most of.
It's an incredible resource. Yes.
That's
so we do love to tap it. And they have a great network. We have several SEALs who work together when they were on SEAL teams together. And so they work for DeliverFund. So they already have that camaraderie, and they're they're really just wicked smart and wildly fun.
And when you can put that mix together, that just is exponential impact.
Yes. And then you get to see the real work, and they're so good at their job.
Something that comes up a lot, that I talk about a lot, but also just in the grant world, is a lot of myths and people trying to help, wanting to help. They know what grants are, but they say things that are really not helpful. Like, oh, why don't you just get a grant for that? You're doing human trafficking, just get some grants. And from your face, I can tell you know exactly. You've heard that before. So what are some common myths or maybe misspeaking that you hear in your work that we need to know? Educate us. How can we better support you in your work? Or how can we better support our local law enforcement in this effort?
Several ways. And I love that you went into the myths about grants, and us in fundraising and nonprofits. We've all heard, we sit at a board meeting, we have a board member looks over and says, well, we should just do that. And I'm like, do you know how hard that would be? Like, or it's impossible. Or I don't have the money. Or first of all, it's not even part of our, like, what we can do legally. Like, and you can't even explain that. And that, so
just call Jeff Bezos or somebody, just call McKinsey.
Don't you love that?
Yeah, there's so many that, like, it's just that easy. Come on.
We should write a book about all of those, and then give it to every board member that signs on to the nonprofit. In fact, I should write a book about what not to say to your executive director if you serve on a board.
That would actually be really good. We could,
that would be my book.
We could do that.
Okay, so we should start taking all the comments and let's write a book. And I think that I'm going to gift it to some former board members.
We should make it required reading before they can.
It's required reading.
There will be a quiz.
It should be. Yeah. But I think I'm going to sign special copies and send it to former board members and say, you inspired this book.
Yeah. With love.
Never read it.
No.
I don't even know that they should be insulted. That's the problem.
Right, exactly. The ones that need to hear it won't.
They won't, but they'll be like, look, I inspired this book.
Right. But the rest of us will know.
Yeah. Okay. Because you know what we will do? I'll say this. We will tell you what board members to never put on your board. But we will not share the names of the good board members because we don't want you poaching them. Isn't that the truth about us, though, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because you don't want them spread too thin.
No. And you would never tell where your best people are and the ones who actually do work. You would never. Y'all are laughing right now, but you all know that this is true. We're all friends until it gets to that point, and it gets real. And
it's competitive.
Yeah, we're like, I am not sharing that board member's phone number or their name or who is our biggest whatever. No way. Okay, back to myths with human trafficking. So myth number one is, people here, they'll take them in the middle of the night or nab them from a mall, or there was even this one myth about like a zip tie on the door handle of a car or something. And sometimes it's like there's a shoe, and they'll say, oh, if you see a zip tie on the door handle of your car, you've been pegged to be, so don't open your car door. Now, there are people who get taken and nabbed, but it's less than 1%. It's really people who have spent some time in grooming that person. They know their trafficker at that point very well. It's usually in that Romeo kind of boyfriend way. And one thing I did not know about traffickers is they're very charismatic and very likable. Because I would think that they would be kind of creepy. Because I'll tell you this one story. This one trafficker who was interviewed by law enforcement, and he went to girls, high school basketball game. Two girls were sitting in front of him, and he was listening to talk. Oh, I really want a tattoo. My parents won't let me get a tattoo. I make good grades, and he's listening to them talk. Well, it was halftime, and they go to concession. He's like, "Hey, I heard you want a tattoo." Yeah, my parents won't let me. Well, I have a tattoo shop. If you just get in the car with me, I'll have you back before the end of the game. Your parents won't even know. You can even get it somewhere where they won't even see it, right? She gets in the car with him because he's nice. He's at the high school basketball game. He's going to be okay. He's probably a parent. Well, he wasn't. He was a trafficker. He drugged her. So there's that percent who does take them. But the thing is, what I didn't realize is that they would be attractive. They would come and sit at your kids' basketball games. They'll sit at the high school basketball game. They'll go to the mall because where do girls go for shopping? Mm-hmm. They go to the mall. Guess where traffickers go shopping? Some of them go to the mall because they're shopping for your girls. There was one trafficker that was interviewed and said he goes to the mall because that's where you find teenage girls. And I'm like, of course you do.
Wow.
So those are things I didn't realize, because they would be good looking and they will look rich and they will all of these things. Because I always thought they would like come in like a black hoodie and, they're sitting there creepy at the high school game. And she's like, no, they're going to be like the most likable person there.
Engaging.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So that's a myth that I, of course, didn't realize that they would be.
And
totally
they're listening
normal.
For ways to connect.
Infiltrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. It's probably not what's portrayed in the movies and not the Hollywood picture.
Not caged up, like, in handcuffs and thrown in a dark room. Because he has to keep because if you think about all of this with just in an economics way, if he's selling a product, which in this case is a human, it's got to be an attractive product. So he's doing things to her to keep her or him, but it's 92% are female. So I'm going to go with the her part, but he's doing things to keep her attractive and to keep her marketable because he's using her image online and he's selling her online. And that's how you buy everything from shoes to pizza to sex. You go online and you just Google it. You don't, there's no dark web for this because people don't have access to the dark web if they're wanting to buy a girl for sex. Like, where do you go, darkweb.com? No, they just put prostitute near me on Google and here you go. There's 17 million options. Which one do you want? Because there's literally that many right around you wherever you are.
Wow.
Right.
So just like finding someone to come fix your roof. You just Google whatever else you need. Wow.
You just Google it. So I think that's another myth is people always think it's the dark web. But it's your computer and you have access just as much as they do. And they sell their products online. But they want their products to be attractive. So they're not, holed up in a dungeness cave. They're out at the mall. They're wherever you are is where traffickers and their victims are. So you can go, you'll be in the airport and there will be someone who won't let this girl or young child by themselves anywhere. They can't carry their own passport and they look like they're old enough to carry their own passport, travel documents. You can see a lot of them have neck tattoos because they've been branded. Traffickers brand their product. So there's certain demarcations that tell you that you belong to this trafficker. And they'll have that trafficker will have that same branding on all of his products. But then he'll sell you off to another trafficker and then that trafficker again gets to brand you. So, and the other thing is, I was at the airport just recently and it's like, if you're being trafficked, call this number. trafficked people don't know they're being trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that sound hard to believe? Just for a second? But that's true, because this is I'm going to go with girl scenario because I'm a girl and it's the only thing I can relate to. But this is a girl who's in love with a boyfriend. And this boyfriend is having her do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't know she's being trafficked. She doesn't know she's being sold until she's so far deep into it. She just knows that this boyfriend is mean or he's abusive, but he gives her drugs, and you have a drug addicted person who then looks like a prostitute whenever she's caught, by police. But she's not a prostitute. She's being sold. She's never benefiting from this. This is forced fraud and coercion. So trafficking victims don't know they're being trafficked. And that was something I never realized until I started this. And I'm talking to people who have been restored on the other side of it. I had one of the victims that I know. She had been trafficked from when she was 5 years old by her mother up until she was 20 something.
Oh my.
But she didn't realize that she was trafficked until after she had gotten out of this world of drugs and what she thought was prostitution. And she was already married before she realized, oh my God, I was trafficked and sold. Because she remembered sitting in the back seat of a car with her trafficker, her boyfriend, and he was talking to another trafficker on the phone, and he told her he would sell her for $250. And she said, I feel like I'm just being sold like a purse. And she remembered that conversation in the back of the car, but she still didn't really know that meant she was being transferred ownership, because she just thought that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm. It didn't click.
It didn't click.
That she was a product to them.
Yeah, that people see, raise your hand or do this thing or these weird hand motions if you're being trafficked. They don't know. Mm-hmm. So it's the responsibility of the public to be on the lookout for things that just don't seem right. Mm-hmm. Little girls going into men's bathrooms to meet other men, at public, at the, I say the State Fair of Texas, but Disney World, at the airport. They'll take a young girl to a men's bathroom stall like it's her dad, leave her in there for an hour, and then come back and get her. There's just things that just don't add up and don't look right. She can't carry her own travel documents. So it's our job, the public, to be on the lookout because she does not know. And the other thing is, don't interfere. You have to call the police, because the only person that can do anything about it is a law enforcement officer. There are some people who love to go after the trafficker, and they go and they beat the trafficker up, and there are organizations who do that, nonprofits who hunt traffickers. But guess what? All you do is just piss off that trafficker, and he's going to go get 3 more victims. Mm-hmm. You have to use law enforcement and give law enforcement the tools and technology to take that person off the street. So law enforcement is the hero here. They're the only people that can do anything about it. And the other thing is, we as activists, when I say pressure, and I mean, when you are voting, when you are listening to what your local leaders, your politicians in your area, what your police chiefs are doing, vote that they have the money to do their job. So we all need to make sure that we have political leaders who want to fight in human trafficking. Well, how can they do that? Making sure that there's money in the budget. Mm-hmm. Because if there's no money in the budget, we know if there's not a line item in a budget, just like for us in nonprofit, if there's no line item in the budget to do something that's harebrained that our founder wants to do, we really can't do it because we didn't plan for it. There's no budget item. Of course, sometimes we get founders who are like, I'll just pay for it. And you're like, okay, fine. But we all have been there, right? But if it's not a line item in the budget, so we have to make sure that we vote, and we make sure that the people who are allocating the budgets, and political leaders make this a priority, and you just have to tell them to make it a priority. Because remember all the way back whenever I talked about how DeliverFund started, it's because whenever founders, Nic was in Afghanistan, he found these women and girls who are being sold. They're American. But he couldn't do anything about it because there was no line item in the budget. So if there's a line item in the budget to go after human traffickers, then DeliverFund would have never started anyway. But we hope that one day DeliverFund will not need to be around because there will be enough funding because it's been allocated. But the thing is that laws haven't caught up enough to where traffickers are and then technology is. And so that's the other thing. So until the laws can catch up where it is, they go to prison for life for selling girls for sex, until the laws can change, and then until we can have enough money and budget for law enforcement, for human trafficking detectives, then it's all of our job to be aware of our surroundings and be the eyes and ears, but then also really rally and force your local cities to care about human trafficking. Why? Because it's your vote and they need your vote.
And to realize, like you said,
into political, but
yeah,
there you go.
But that it is right here and that we need to do things right here locally in our communities.
Yeah, you know, there's this it's not just human trafficking, we do labor trafficking as well. So we have our labor trafficking I have to say everything in normal language, but we have a CRM, okay, and a search engine. And we know what a search engine is. So we have our search engine of human traffickers, and we have a search engine of all of the labor traffickers. And so our CRM of it, side of it, is called LTIP, LTIP, and is labor trafficking something. And so this is where I don't get well with it. You know, remember I told you about the military, and so LTIP.
Terms, right. We'll go with that.
Well, so, but it's our CRM. But in that CRM, it has all the labor trafficking, the illicit massage businesses. And so this is the crazy thing, Teresa. So I live north of Dallas, in what I think is it's a relatively small town. And I was like, "Ooh, pull up my zip code, right?" Because you know it doesn't. Obviously, it happens here in the city because of the city. It's just so many people. And I pulled up my zip code and my street. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that is the Kroger like 2 miles from my house." Illicit massage business, right? So the labor trafficking from that. It's prominent. It's everywhere. So the town north of Dallas that's not very big it's right here. So yes, it's in your town. It's on your street. It's labor trafficking in in your local restaurants. Those weird massage businesses that have the windows all blacked out. Well, they look weird for a reason, you know. Whenever you're and when something's crazy, it's probably crazy. If it's something's not right, it's not right. Trust your gut. So those things, get that out of your town and make it harder and harder for human traffickers and labor traffickers to do business. So that's what DeliverFund, we were started again, hunting terrorists. So dismantling terrorist network, making it harder and harder for terrorists to do their job. So our same plan is to make it harder and harder for traffickers to do their job, make it harder and harder for any trafficker to do their job, make it harder for them to rent a storefront, to find an Uber, to get an Airbnb. Because, I mean, really, if your house is on Airbnb, you don't want it being used for selling sex, for this weekend while you're in Florida and you're like, oh, this will pay for my vacation. Well, no, you make sure that the companies that you're posting your house with, make sure that there are no human traffickers that will be renting their home.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to do that.
To not be a part of it yourself.
Yeah, not be a part of it.
Even unknowingly. Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful because I think sometimes it just comes down to education and, like you said, being aware, but also being willing to be aware and not just turning a blind eye and being content with that, but actually creating that knowledge to where we can pay attention and we can sit up and be more on the alert and know what to do when something does come up, instead of just, oh, that's probably nothing, I'm sure it's fine. Maybe we do need to, like you said, listen to your gut and go a little deeper and look at things through a different lens.
Yeah, and I think that your audience specifically, because they are so involved in community and they're so involved in, impact and meaningful work. I think that this audience, more than any, already would do that. It's the people who are blind that whenever I tell them, that I had, dinner with some people over Christmas, some friends. Well, you do what? Does that exist? Like, I'm not going to say these like, and I'm like, yeah, it does exist. So it's like there's these people who are just so blind to it, and they live in their own little like fairyland. And I'm like, my gracious, Lord, help us all, because they're the people who could make the change. They're the people who have the capacity financially to make a big change, but they won't look up from their own little world. But this audience, I believe, because they're already in it, they already know it exists. They see it. And they're already advocates. So you're very blessed to have this great, great audience.
And, because of that kind of gives us a burden of responsibility to help educate and to help open people's eyes to
your
this
neighbor.
Is reality. Yeah. Look around your neighborhood, your schools, everywhere.
Your kids are at risk.
Us.
Yeah. The kids in your neighborhood are at risk. The gaming platforms that they're on, that is the number one target. There's one story, and I'd love to share the video. Maybe I'll just send you a link, and then you can put it on. And we use the story, and it's a boy named Noah. His real name is not Noah, but that's the name that we use. But a young boy, I think he was 8 years old, was taken in the middle of the night. Well, his family knew somebody at DeliverFund. Well, they called us at DeliverFund. Anyhow, the little boy had been taken, and before law enforcement even got their hands around it, we had found, all the information. We knew Kara Huntress, she's on our team, knew who Noah's trafficker was, and then gave the information to law enforcement and gave them the tools, and they got Noah. So they recovered an 8-year-old boy within less than like 2 days. But without that parent knowing about DeliverFund at that point, not that DeliverFund is the answer, but your local law enforcement is, but making sure that they have the tools and resources. But an 8-year-old boy, a target through video games, and he was planning to be sold. And boys bring a lot of money.
That's just
so a trafficker makes between $100,000 to $400,000 off of one victim per year.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Okay, that's a lot, and they traffic minimum 3 people, average 5, 7, up to some of them up to 13. Do you know how much money that is that they're making?
Off of our kids.
Of our kids.
As a parent, that's just sickening. It's
sickening. And then, of course, they're not paying taxes, because I have to put everything down in economics, but they're not paying taxes on that. Right?
So it's free and clear.
But when that person is out and they gone through restoration services, it takes $786,000 a year for the upkeep of that person, that victim, a year for the rest of their life. $786,000 a year that taxpayers are paying. Taxpayers are paying. So if you don't care about anything at all, you could at least care about, because most people care about their money, because that's usually how you motivate them. But I know y'all care more because this is the caring audience. But if you've got to convince somebody and you can't get them in the fact that driving is bad, or this is your kids are at risk, or they're being sold for sex 10 to 15 times a day, 7 days a week. If none of that gets them, well, then maybe if they know that they're going to have to pay nearly $1 million a year, maybe they'll care about that. So I'm giving you all kinds of weapons, tools to convince somebody, but that's just crazy.
I think that's a fantastic example that we need both the data, the hard numbers, and those compelling, heart-wrenching stories. We need both in our storytelling, in our communications. We have to appeal to both the logic and the emotion, and especially in a situation like this, with a cause like this, where it is so critical. And you're investing in the future and you're being proactive. This is something that you're having to plant seeds now for things that you don't even know are going to exist, for technology that hasn't been invented yet, but you're already having to fight it in advance of it being created, which is just mind-boggling. And that's why you need the best of the best working on it.
Yeah. That's part of the what amazes me about this organization is they think far ahead. So developing the technology, and then really, a lot of most of our money goes to funding technology, because we have to build the technology platform, because no technology platform ever existed before. There was not a human trafficking watch list before DeliverFund. There was not a search engine just of human traffickers before DeliverFund. So we built all the technology. We've built everything, and then the storing of the data for all of these years. So for the past 7 years, we have every human trafficker that's ever posted an ad ever. We have it all. So that's which ultimately turns into evidence, which we can't call it that, but it's intelligence that we get trace, that we give to law enforcement. Right.
Connect the dots.
So it's patterns of behaviors and patterns of their travel, and connect the dots and give ultimately the law enforcement the tool, and then the victim doesn't have to testify. And our we have 100% prosecution rate on the ones that have gone to trial
without the victim being
without
involved.
The victim.
What a blessing for everything they've been through.
I didn't realize that our system, whenever it's a human trafficking case, they have to have the victim testify. And I always quote Nic. Nic says, what looks like a drug addicted prostitute on the stand against a Harvard trained lawyer. Right? It just never turns out well. And she's there in front of her person she loves, her boyfriend. And rarely does this work out, right?
And it still may not have clicked that she's been trafficked, like you said earlier.
And it never goes to trial if she has to testify, is ultimately what happens, or the attorney just eats her up. The other thing, I like the Sal Hernandez. He is an analyst. He's a former Navy SEAL. He works with us. And he did this quote when he was talking one day, helping me on a pitch at the foundation. He said, whenever somebody's charged with murder, they don't have the person who was killed, they could come alive. Yeah, that's the dude that shot me. Sal is adorable, right? And he's just so real about just the ugliness of life, and in such a fun way. But yeah, we don't make the dead person come back and say that's the dude that shot me. But we make the trafficking victim come up and say, yeah, that's the guy who trafficked me. So we are eliminating that piece.
That's brilliant to be able to do that for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So much to unpack here. And I feel like we could talk all day on
forever,
all these resources, but I've kept you long enough, and I really appreciate the information and just the knowledge, because I think a lot of what we do in nonprofit work comes back to the education piece of getting proper education, accurate education, and then the tools to know how to act and take effective actions next, which is really what we're all about, of making sure we can actually make a difference and not just misinformation or just talking about things, but nothing happens. We need to take good, effective action.
And giving us the tools and resources. And some of you listening may be, work on the other side, on the grant granting side or the foundation side, but knowing what's legal. So sometimes I talk to foundations like, oh yeah, we support this, whatever. I'm like, well, actually, and I never can say it, but if a person or organization is going after traffickers and they just basically, they set up stings and they go in and they beat them up or whatever, that's illegal. Like, you can't fund that. What they're doing is not even legal. Mm-hmm. And so having foundations educated on who's really doing what and how to understand it and break it down, right? Because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of noise in this space. And a lot of organizations are doing such amazing work, but it's tough work, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. Just to hear the stories. I mean, in the very beginning, when I started DeliverFund, it affects you. It affects your sleep. It affects everything about your life for a good long time, because it kind of haunts you. And it should, rightfully so.
Yeah, it's a haunting issue. And I can only imagine the ones actually out there doing this work on the front lines.
Oh, yeah. Our analysts who look at these images all day long, 16 hours a day. So part of our technology is developing artificial intelligence. So the computers help sift through a lot of the images. So the analysts, they don't have to be exposed to so much of it. But analysts right now are having to be exposed to teach the computer. But ultimately, when the computers are taught, it will help eliminate. So right now, we've got analysts who are inundated with this. But long term, this will help the future analysts and law enforcement. So they are not exposed to as much of just the quantity of it. It's still raw and horrible.
Because that's traumatic in itself, just having to process that and those images and stories.
It's traumatic when you see videos. I mean, Teresa, the traffickers, they call themselves pimps, but they're so bold. Some of them are so bold. They've got their Instagram videos, which is public. Like, you can go and find any of this on Instagram. I won't even say the trafficker's name because he's out there, but he's taking a 15-year-old girl, all on video, to a tattoo parlor, and he's tattooing his pimp name on her throat. Wow. And she's laying there. Guess what? 2 videos later, there's another girl who probably looks 12, taking her to the same tattoo place, tattooing the same thing across her throat.
Wow.
Okay? More videos, tattooing the same name. And you're thinking, this tattoo guy, why isn't he asking questions?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's horrific. But he's got it on his Instagram.
That's crazy.
It's pictures of my cat sleeping hardly. Like, they're just so bold. Like, there's one trafficker, this one crazy story. I know I just got to tell you how bold they are. There's this one trafficker, lived in Las Vegas, and he buys jewelry from a jewelry maker, actually here in Frisco, Texas. And I'm dying to say the name. But he was coming to a jewelry store here in Frisco, Texas, which is right outside of Dallas. And he's taking his victims with him. And this jewelry store owner, oh, yeah, hey, trafficker name here, pimp. Good to see you. He's like, yeah, I need another one. He's like, and he thought and he said it was his wives. Okay. This is all in his Instagram video. I cannot make this up. Then same trafficker on Instagram video goes to a plastic surgeon's office in Beverly Hills. And you can hear the plastic surgeon's office front desk lady. It says, he's like, oh, hey, I'm bringing another one of my girls. He's on video with his girl. Bring another one of my girls. Should tell you something. Front desk girl says, oh, trafficker number 1, we love when you bring your girls.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And this is on video. And I'm thinking, somebody should, if their ears aren't raised and they don't have questions about this, there's big problems.
And if they do know what's going on and they're supporting it,
there's supporting it.
Bigger problems.
That's right. all of these, everybody from tattoo parlors to plastic surgeons to jewelry, and it's all over the country. So it's not, it is literally like the Mark Samuels jewelry in Frisco, Texas, to plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. And and you see, this is a trafficker. These guys are not poor. He's flying all over the country with girls, multiple girls.
And well known, apparently.
Well known.
Amongst these vendors.
Yep.
Wow.
Spending a lot of money, and they don't care. They're about the money too. He's about the money. They're about the money. It all comes down to follow the money.
It's good business. Yeah. Wow. And
it's sickening. Yeah. So that's on their Instagram, and it's live, and you can go there right now and start finding it. Or you can follow Kara the Huntress. Kara reveals all of this for you on, she is our DeliverFund teammate, but she will show you all of this every single day, as much as you want to see.
Wow.
Traffickers, bags of money, trash bags of money.
That's crazy. So really, yeah,
they're
it's not
so
just
bold.
Yeah, it's not just the lifestyle and process. It's a whole economic ecosystem that has to be tackled and addressed.
Disrupted, right? You have to stop everything. Everything from don't let them buy an airline ticket. Don't let them get to an Uber. Don't let them deposit their money in your bank, because that's money laundering. And then you, dear bank, get in trouble for that too.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole ecosystem. You're right.
Yeah. So that's good information just to create awareness. And I want to challenge our listeners just to think back and look at this differently. Like, how can you look at the problem differently, look at solutions and ways to support differently, whether it's in our everyday lives, in our work, in our nonprofits, whatever it is. How can we help be a part of the solution and not perpetuate the growing problem?
And sometimes you don't know you are, right?
Yeah, right.
And that was something that was eye-opening to me too, because I'm amazed every day about how bold traffickers are.
Yeah, and probably right under our noses, and we don't know it.
It's right under our noses. Yeah. It's on it's my mother, the Instagram or the Facebooks. It's on the Instagram and the Facebooks. It's right there, literally under our noses.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, keep up the good work and keep us posted on how
thank you for having me.
Support. As we wrap up, is there a resource that's been especially meaningful to you in your journey in nonprofit work?
You know what? I think it's to me it's mentors and surrounding myself with people who know more, and just listening, and I don't come in ever thinking I know it all or anything at all, because resources change and career. My life has changed so much, but really it's been about people. Wow, I actually do like people. Just realized.
I'm glad you could discover that.
It's been the people that have poured so much into me and have cared.
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Good.
You're awesome, though. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. And tell us where we can connect to learn more, or if people want to connect with you.
Yeah, so DeliverFund.org. I am Christi Nabors, so I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, Nabors, Nabors. But Kara the Huntress, I think you will find a lot from her. She's the one who will reveal all of these stories to you and more. And I'm going to send you the Noah video, so in case people want to see that. But DeliverFund.org has all of those. And then if you have a local law enforcement agency that you would love to have trained, or at least to have access to technology, y'all please reach out, because I'd love to help you in any way. I know a lot of, especially nonprofits, you guys are working directly with law enforcement services. I mean, you know them, you know who they are, and you are a trusted partner. And if there's something that you wanted to do to gift to them, training, please reach out. Love to help.
And imagine what kind of ripple effect that simple thing could have. Like, we don't know, but that could have a huge impact on somebody's life or on many lives. So that small act of just an introduction could make all the difference.
It could. Well, I'll tell you one quick ripple effect that will blow your mind. So last year, DeliverFund trained 600 and something officers. The ones who are human traffic investigators, one investigator has an average span in human trafficking division 5 to 7 years. Okay. So one law enforcement officer, 5 to 7 years, that law enforcement officer will have average of 13 trafficking arrests in a year. Okay. Mm-hmm. One law enforcement officer, 13 arrests a year, 13 times 5 or 7. That's one officer. Now multiply that times the 600.
Wow.
Do you see the ripple effect? It's huge, right?
Wow.
I mean, I could do the math, but I'm slow, so I have to get my calculator, but y'all can do the math and we'll do it together. And I've done it, but it's tens of thousands, right? So one introduction, if you, again, to your law enforcement agency, if they're looking for training or want them to be trained or just want to add this to something that would be interesting to them. We've done everything, training with Homeland Security, train the FBI, work supporting those operations around the country, and anything that we can do to help strengthen and make your community safer and keep your kids safer in those damn video games.
Well, thank you for the information and keep up the good work. I mean, it's amazing. And I so appreciate your efforts and your team and you investing this time to share with us so that we can be better educated and more effective too.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and you've been wonderful, and this is awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. What did you think about this one? Was there anything that surprised you about the information Christi shared, or their approach, or the work they're doing? I would love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me on LinkedIn or on my website contact form, and let's keep the conversation going. This is something that we need to continue sharing resources and support for our communities and our families. We need to keep our community safe and our kids safe. So please help share and spread the word. And the work you're doing is important too. And I want to encourage you to keep up the good work, whether it's in grant writing, in nonprofit work, as a volunteer, as a board member, whatever it is, keep it up because the world needs you to be a part of it. We need to step up with excellence and do our work well to serve nonprofits and to help educate and understand. We need to educate our boards, educate our teams, and support them so that they can fulfill their missions. All right, reach out if you have questions. If you are interested in grant writing, go take my quiz at teresahuff.com/quiz and find out if you have what it takes to be a grant writer. Have a great week. Go take some action and go change your world.